Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Virginia City Council chambers. This is a regularly scheduled committee of the whole meeting. I will call this meeting to order. Today's date is Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. The time is 9:05 a.m. We have a full agenda today, and so I will turn, just for the public's edification, we have on the line Mike Kai regarding the study of the sulfate concentrations at the wastewater treatment facility. We also have Pamela Bean, our city clerk, on the line, along with Councilor Julianne Paulson. Anyone else on the line, Britt?
We have Lucinda B. Johnson, Matt Reed, Adrian Hansen, Brian Lindsay, Gigi Grahek, Michael Klocko, Shashai Rao, and Timothy White.
Thank you very much. We'll turn the agenda over to our city administrator, Britt C. Bennis. Britt?
Thank you. The first item on the agenda is actually a presentation from Mike Kai regarding the study regarding the findings of sulfate concentrations at the wastewater treatment plant.
Mr. Kai, good morning.
I see them talking, but I don't see anything. I don't hear anything. I'm going to go out of the meeting and go back in again.
Share screen button.
On 1 second and see what.
Can you hear me now, Pam?
Yes.
Okay.
Able.
No, this click share is not working. 1 second. Okay, try again. Can you Hear me, Pam?
Yes.
Okay. Yep, we're good to go now. Nope, so you can share your screen, Mai Kai.
Okay, I can share my screen.
Yep.
That's great.
Yep.
Mhm. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
And I go this way. Okay. So let's go back to what's our pilot system. So this is a flow diagram for the field pilot test treatment system. So the first thing is that the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant will be flow into a reaction tank. In the reaction tank, we will use the barium chloride to react with the sulfate. So after the reaction, the dissolved sulfate will change to becoming a barium sulfate solid, but it is a fine particles. It's still suspended in the liquid. So that fine particles could be coagulated by the ferric chloride, becoming a large solid. Then the large solid will be settling on the bottom in the settling tank. The top clear liquid will be flowed to the filters. The filter will be further treat the liquid to remove the fine solid. Then the clean top solutions will be discharged. The bottom sediment for that called barite sludge will be bring back to university. Oh no. So this is the pilot system. The pilot system itself included two modules. One is the reaction and the filtration modules. Another is the filtration module. So basically, they already installed into a trailer here. The trailer size is about 20 feet long and 8.5 feet wide and is 8 feet high. So the whole treatment system is completely installed inside a trailer, and the whole water, all of the treat will be performed inside this trailer. So other than the trailer, we probably need a little bit of storage space out of the trailer. It's probably like a 5 feet to 5 feet storage places in the field. So as I mentioned, we proposed this pilot treatment system in a COW meeting back to November 5th, 2019. During the meeting, we got the approval for this pilot program. And we also required to provide an exemption letter from the NPC to indicate that the sulfate reduction pilot program will not affect the Virginia wastewater permitting process. So after the meeting, we got a letter from the NPCA from the Scott Kaiser, and he mentioned that this pilot study will not require any modification of the Virginia WW. So that was the initial plan. So initial plan was that the test should be performed during the July to October of last year. But as I mentioned that the pilot system, the delivery of the pilot system was delayed. Actually, it was delayed in late August after we installed the pilot system into the trailer and to do some tests. Then the whole summer already finished. Then we cannot do any field pilot test. So we have to postpone the test until this year. So now the current revised plan is that to perform the field pilot test from April to August 2021. We don't have a fixed start date because it's really depending on the temperature. The whole system must be operated above 32 Fahrenheit degrees, so the water cannot be frozen inside the pilot, the tanks or the pipes inside the trailer. The test itself actually maybe last 3 months. So from today's meeting, we wanted to see that we have submit one equipment placement and a research agreement. That is a Word document. Let me see. This is the equipment placement and research agreement document. So this is a draft version. This document is provided in order to reduce the potential risks or damage to personnel or equipment or system for the both of the wastewater treatment plant or also for our pilot system. So this draft version is for you to review and to edit. We would like to get the final version of this one to be signed before the pilot test starts. Also, the other one is that we would like to get the approval to proceed with the pilot test with our mobile treatment unit. So that's all I have. Question time now.
Yes, thank you. This is Larry Cuffey, the mayor of Virginia. I have two questions for you. First, I'm looking at the cost-benefit analysis. In other words, the cost to the city with respect to this pilot program. I just want you to reiterate that the city does not incur costs associated with the testing program, number one. This is a two-part question. And then number two, does this pilot program, as we're utilizing and putting in, the chemicals and doing these testing, and how, do you have any information on how this affects our digesters that are at the wastewater treatment plant? And if we've had to replace a couple of them, and based upon the information that we received, this process, are our digesters affected by this pilot program? So a two-part question, Mai. Thank you.
Okay. So I would answer the second question first because that is a more technical side, and I will ask Lucinda or Adrian to help me answer the first question.
Thank you.
So you talk about the digestion. So from this whole process, as I mentioned, that we get the effluent from the wastewater treatment facility, and then this process add the barium chloride. Most of the barium itself already go to the sediment. And the ferric chloride, that is some chemicals, or the chemicals that typically is used in the wastewater treatment plant. So maybe Adrian, can you help me to answer this question?
I would be delighted to, May. Mayor, councilors, there should be no cost incurred by the city. The demands on the staff should be minimal. I believe that what we need in terms of resources is a 220 outlet, and we'll be in communication with your staff. And if they walk by the trailer and it's got water coming out of it, they'll push the big red button and call us. But other than minor checking once in a while, there shouldn't be any cost incurred by the city of Virginia.
Okay, thank you. And then if you could just clarify the other question about the digester. We've had some problems with them and had to replace a couple of them at a significant cost. Does this pilot program and the process you're using affect the digesters in any way?
No, they shouldn't. And the reason they shouldn't is that we'll be downstream of the digesters, and all the solids we generate will come back to NRI, not go into the digesters. So we're keeping all of our solids out of your digestion system. We're doing that for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is we want to look at the solids. But the other reason is that don't know exactly what would happen in the situation that you've described, and we're not interested in finding out in an unhappy way. So everything that we generate in terms of solids will come back to NRI.
Thank you for that clarification. Counselor Bearable has a question.
Yeah, whoever that was on the phone, the gentleman. So this pilot study, then, if you're not going to reintroduce it into a digester, how are we going to find out in the future if it's going to affect our digesters? Because it'll have to go through there, I would think, unless there's going to be a separate entity if that's purified sewage going back into the stream system. Answer that one for me.
Good question. In future situations, those solids would still be kept separate because they're going to be chemical solids, and there's no reason to put them through a biological digester. So, if in the future a community was asked to control sulfate using this technique, what would happen is the purified, disinfected water would then be treated at the end as near as, that's our intention right now. If something different happened, that would have to be rethought.
So in the end, then, we'd have to have a way to collect that would be the city's responsibility if the system becomes profitable or less expensive than some of the other ones that they've been talking about. So we'd have to do some modification to our plant, correct?
If that was the case, right now, the way the system is being operated, we don't know how it'd be operated in a full scale. That'd be something that would be negotiated with the city and with their engineer. But for testing purposes, the way it's operated is it's like an add-on to the treatment plant. So it's not integrated into the treatment train. It's an addition at the end of the treatment plant.
Okay, and I'm all for your
Technology that it's
studies.
being compared with,
Yeah.
based on earlier work that was done for the state of Minnesota, is with reverse osmosis
And that's too expensive.
add-on. And I agree with your question that at some point we would probably want to back up and say, okay, is there a way to integrate this into the entire treatment train and use as many of the existing vessels as possible? But right at this point, we're just doing it as a standalone.
Okay, you answered my question, and I can tell you from my perspective, my background is a pharmacist, so I know all the chemical reactions and stuff. I would definitely be against any reverse osmosis programs. They're too expensive for a city our size.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. One more question before we go to Counselor Freely. This equipment placement and research agreement has anything changed from the previous agreement that we looked at in 2019?
So this is a new version for the agreement. So the previous document we submitted for the NDA, it's the IP, it's the right to intellectual property. So that means protect the data, the results, not anything related to the liability issues.
Thank you. Counselor Freely.
Is it time to make a motion, and can we simultaneously do the equipment placement agreement along with the project as one motion?
I
Or do you
believe
need two separate?
Well, I would think they'd just make one motion, but
I would make a motion then to go ahead with the agreement for the NRRI's pilot trial of sulfate reduction project in addition to the equipment placement agreement.
Okay, thank you. Moved by Counselor Freely. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Counselor Johnson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yep, have a great day.
Thank you very much for your help and cooperation.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, please.
The agenda is that Terry Nystrom with the VITA Task Force Downtown Survey Results.
Welcome Terry and Betsy to the committee of the whole meeting once again.
Yes, good morning.
You had a chance to sit in on that presentation a little bit, so I look forward to, revisiting it. Thank you and welcome.
First of all, on behalf of the VITA board, thank you for letting us come here today and talk about the good work that was done with the task force. As Britt said, I'm Terry Nystrom, and I'm the current president of VITA. I also want to recognize the task force members.
Go ahead, Pam. You have to put the microphone
Please,
closer to
Terry,
you
could you speak up into the microphone? It's hard to hear.
and take your mask down, sorry.
Maybe I'll take my mask off. How's that? A little bit better? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. As I was saying, I want to recognize our task force members. Of course, it was led by Britt and Betsy, but also Maya Beyondich, the president of the Laurentian Chamber, Eric Holmstrom, Steve Johnson, Mary McReynolds, Julianne Paulson, Dave Tuttle, and then we also had some volunteers that really helped us push out the survey by canvassing businesses, Carolyn Deneen and Mary McReynolds. So without all of the collective work, we wouldn't be able to present what we're presenting today. So I'm going to turn it over to Betsy, and she's going to...
Had a great team there. Great team.
Thanks, Mayor.
Yep, absolutely. So my name is Betsy Levanti. I'm presenting on behalf of Revive Virginia. I'm the chair of that board. I'm also the Small Business Development Center consultant in Virginia. And so I've been a part of this work since almost the beginning. And we started, you want to advance it? There you go, Britt. So we started back in February of 2016. Councilor McReynolds at that time had sent out a downtown survey to the businesses, and we worked with that information to do a couple of things. One was we used it to inform the work of Revive. So a downtown group started meeting, led by Mike Stone and Joe Gerton at the time, and did a lot of work with that initial survey results. We had our first Marty cleanup, the Grand Slam cleanup of the downtown in May of 2016. We applied for a grant with the assistance of the Virginia Community Foundation, and became a committee under their auspice at the time to do a project at the 118 and the 529 addresses in downtown. The 118, we used that work to inform a lot of what we learned and why the downtown rehab program was created, and all those sorts of things were informed by the 118 work that was done, and it was successful. There is a gentleman in there now renting that out on a lease-to-own basis, which is what we were hoping for. The city did their new comp plan. There's a lot of other little dates in here, as you can see. We've been doing a lot of work ever since that first survey. So, supported by VITA and by the city council, we've come and talked to you several times about the different things. And this slide here talks about the work progressing all the way through our downtown revitalization program, which a number of you attended in November of 2019 when we kicked that off, and then into the VITA task force, because in 2020 then we were looking at what are the next steps, what are the next things that we should do to continue supporting our business owners in this town. And the task force and economic development look at this is where we ended up with the next survey. So I'm going to turn it back over to Terry here to talk about the goals of the VITA task force.
So as far as the goals go, the first thing, as far as when we looked at our mission of what is the task force, what's the intent of the task force, and it was to intentionally plan the City of Virginia's next steps to further progress economic development based on the work of the comprehensive plan that was done, and then to build capacity within the city to do the work. We recognize the importance of partnerships, and we've had some really good trajectory with a lot of partnerships throughout the community. So our goal was, A, how do we communicate and ensure that we're getting the word out? Sorry, I can't see my little one. And then also, the next goal was to ensure that the programs that we had, that there was enough awareness from business owners and from building owners about what we had. And then lastly was to assess the programs for its effectiveness. And that's kind of where we're at this point. After we talk about the survey, what do we do next? Assess how effective it was, and then what's the way forward? So what did we do as far as what we were going to do originally is that we were going to focus on a group coming together, and this is of course pre-COVID. We were going to come together, bring in stakeholders and talk about what would be beneficial, what's worked, what hasn't. And we were going to do a large focus group. Well, COVID hit, as you know, this was right around the time frame that we were starting our work last March. So we then proposed that it would be perhaps best to take a look at a second survey, being it was 5 years since we did a previous survey, and that way we could at least engage in learning what we need to learn from what's been effective. So the goal of the 2020 survey was to make sure that we got awareness of it. We used the GROW Minnesota model out of the Laurentian Chamber of Commerce partnership with GROW. So we used those questions. We thought that way we could ensure that we had data that could also be linked up against with state data with questions that were asked, and we added a few additional questions that were pertinent to Virginia. We pushed out a postcard. We did a social media blast. Both Britt and I had our phone numbers on the card, so if anyone wanted to talk about the survey, they could call us. And then again, we had volunteers out talking with the businesses, encouraging them to participate. And then we did a last push the end of November as far as getting responses. So if we move to the next slide, the takeaways from 2015 during that survey, there were 24% respondents, 70% were building owners, and the message that was heard during that survey was that we need to promote downtown, we need to promote and create events and really boost the vitality, but then there was also a clear reference to addressing blight, empty buildings, and the state of the buildings, and then also a focus on public safety. 2020, the main takeaways, we had 39 respondents, 28% response rate, 87% were building owners, and then there was recognition that the programs that had been created by Revive and VITA and the City of Virginia were making an impact. There was recognition that better signage was needed for pedestrians and for bicyclists, and then also for drawing traffic from the highway downtown, and then focused on using maybe residential units to assist with our housing shortage. But overall, it was an increased sense of positive outlook and sense of community. So the next part of the presentation is the actual data that we pulled from the results. So I'll probably move kind of quickly through this. You have it in your packet. The businesses that we surveyed, of course, the ranges of age of the businesses were from 116 years old to brand new. 95% of them had no change in any ownership within the past year, and 82% were locally owned. We look at the residential facilities as far as that particular component of potentially using downtown businesses to help with the housing shortage. These were the answers to the questions. 14 didn't have residential space. 3, the owners were businesses that owned the spaces occupied the residential space as well. And then 2 rented them out. 1 was renovating, and then a couple have space that they weren't utilizing. This is the stages of development. Again, we use that GROW Minnesota model, so all of these questions are coming out of the chamber. So this just talks about which stage those businesses were in. Most of them very established businesses. This was their expectation for their revenues, present and future. And actually, if you look at, COVID timeframe, the responses were not necessarily as negative as we could have potentially seen if we look at revenues. As far as the business expectations on expenses, the top two growing expenses are wages and healthcare. That's not surprising. And then if we look at the business conditions, we look at the percentage that were somewhat satisfied or very satisfied with their business performance conditions. That was the vast majority of the businesses we surveyed. If we look at their satisfaction with their current location, the majority were either very satisfied or satisfied. And then if we look at that hopeful for the future question, which that's, as an internal optimist, I love that question because I see tons of hope for the future of the city of Virginia and the downtown district especially, that there's hope and energy. So how do we keep that going? Another exciting thing is that 63% of the businesses are planning for a new investment, so that's a really important statistic here. 49% within the next year, 8% within the next 2 years, and then some 22% unsure when. But that's really important to hear. And what they're planning on doing is, of course, expanding or renovating their facilities. Other plans would, of course, be improving the inside and outside of their building, adding handicap accessibility, improving heating systems, and energy efficiencies. So if we look at the business opportunities and the challenges, advertising and marketing and having people shop in that downtown location, that's a challenge and an opportunity if we can grow that, of course, with competition. The high healthcare costs and other property tax costs, that's also some challenges. Just the overall economic condition and the unknowns are a challenge as well. But on the opportunity side, we look at increasing awareness of their businesses, cleaning up and revitalizing downtown, using the retail spaces and expanding product expansion as well, utilize tax incentives, and then expand coverage and expand marketing.
If I may, Terry, could I ask one quick question? That'd be all right? As you look at the challenges with respect to this, you were talking about the utility costs, particularly in downtown area where the majority of the costs are associated with steam, and they continue to have steam. And during the course of prior to the movement to convert the residential and commercial properties outside the downtown core district and provide a new type of steam delivery system as is being constructed as we speak, and the reduction in the steam costs based on an agreement through the PPA agreement between Xcel and our utility. Is these businesses recognized as savings? Was that part of your survey where they recognized a savings from as a result of the change in the utilities formula on what they charge for their steam? Have anybody said anything about that?
Not that we heard in particular in the survey results, but I think that's a really good point as far as, how do we engage in conversations with them about that? We can maybe key in on
Thank you.
specifically.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
That's a great point, Mayor Cuffey.
Thank you. Thank you.
Nothing's come. Okay, very good. Okay, moving on as far as to the employment statistics. You can see that the workforce is fairly stable. Some of the barriers to increasing the workforce is that a lack of candidates or a lack of candidates with the appropriate skills or the lack of the appropriate soft skills, including some of those work ethic things or basic education. And then also some barriers to hiring right now is insufficient demand or even uncertainty. We also heard that just the uncertainty is another barrier to hiring at this point. Engagement with the schools, the survey respondents do engage with the school systems with internships and apprentice programs, being involved in youth employment programs, college job fairs, mentorships, and then they also mentioned that they sit on a variety of educational advisory boards. They are involved with our school systems. And then we asked them also, where do they get their information about what's, the programs that we offer? And we got a whole host of answers as far as where that information is coming from, which if we look at a collaborative event and effort, that kind of speaks highly to the fact that there's many people out talking about it, and that's exactly what we want, is we want to have partnership and multiple people talking about what programs are available so that we're hitting it at certain, from many different angles. When we asked the question about how helpful has city government been in providing assistance for your business, as you can see that the vast majority have been either very satisfied or satisfied. And then, of course, we have certainly a couple who maybe gave us some feedback of what they'd want to see different. And we certainly recognize that. There's always room for improvement in anything we're doing. When we asked the question about have you utilized incentives or grants or other assistance, why or why not, 51, almost 52% have utilized the programs with new signage or new awnings, storefront loans, and indicating really the whys. That's really the only way they could afford to make those improvements in their buildings. On the why not, too many hoops for too little reward, too much paperwork, too difficult. Didn't know that non-building owners qualified, and there are certain programs that non-building owners do qualify for but not holistically. So that is an accurate statement. And then lack of awareness, and that's something that we, again, continue to push out awareness of it. What are we doing right, and what can we improve on? What we're doing right is allocating grant money. We're certainly seeing a waiting list of businesses who want to apply for that grant money, despite of having to complete paperwork. And of course, that's always going to be a necessary part of getting government funding is submitting paperwork. Increased interaction with the city and VITA, and that's something we want to, of course, continue promoting that awareness of what VITA is doing and what the city is doing to support them. And then the good work of Revive Virginia and all of their partnerships out in the community. As far as what we can improve on, employee parking was highlighted, the condition of the streets and the sidewalks. I'm sure you never hear that here at the city, right? Surprise, surprise. Property blight, unsightly storefronts, and not enough interaction with the city and VITA. Again, that's something we always continue
Barry,
to look into.
if I may, those are all valid points.
Sure.
All valid points. Thank you.
Terry, can I ask you a question here? You got the lack of parking. That lot that was just taken down where the Northland building that's public parking. That is not county parking in that lot. And people need to know that. There's, 89 slots there, I believe. And that's all for public or employees that work in downtown. It's not for counties. Got to make other arrangements. That was in our agreement when we tore that Northland office building down. So I drive by there every day just about, and it's hardly any cars in there.
That's a great point. I mean, how do we promote that?
We've talked about the wayfinding too.
Okay, that's a great point.
Thank you.
Okay, and so how can we assist and support your business? We also asked that question. Investments into the area, more grants, town hall meetings, increased promotion of downtown, increasing signage, more events. Once we can, have wide-scale events, and I hear after this is all over, it's going to be like the Roaring 20s. So maybe we'll get there, and we'll have lots of events for everybody to attend. Promote the history. We've got our rich history of downtown and of the city overall, and then increase our advertising of the area. What local or state, federal policies affect your business? This is a whole host of what the respondents indicated affect their businesses. And so now, what's next? So where do we go from here? how do we continue and expand on this very successful downtown rehab program? And then what partnerships do we need to address the gaps that exist? So when we look at the partnerships, whether it be public or private, the nonprofit and civic entities, this is who we kind of gathered together as far as who we think would be stakeholders in each of those categories. And then one thing that was really important, especially to, I think that Councilor Paulson mentioned this in our VITA task force meeting on it, that it's really important to assure that we have somebody who's accountable if we're going to be doing something. What entity is accountable to be doing, the act, getting down to action? Because we can, admire programs and admire surveys, but really the results are how do we act on what we hear from the respondents. So this last slide kind of, pieces out as far as what partners do we have for public and city and government that could help in each of the indicators that they said they would need help with. Sure, Mary.
And one quick, just a statement, if I may. This is great work that you're doing here, and I'll wait till the end to make some of the comments. But as far as project partners to assist, the city has taken on, hiring a new community development director. And in the audience, we have John Sullivan, who is our new community development director, is going to really be a good resource and professional service that we could provide as you move forward with your project partners to assist. John is, of course, an expert in that area of community development, and we look forward to having him work with Revive and everybody else as far as our piece as the City of Virginia on project partners to assist. Thank you.
So that concludes the presentation. Again, on behalf of the VITA board, many thanks to those who helped get this off the ground and to encourage participation. It's really important to hear, and then we'll continue just the dialogue and the way forward. So we would then, of course, hope to get guidance from the city of what would you like to see next from us.
Sure. If we may have a couple more questions. Yeah, we may have a couple more questions real quick. Councilor Paulson, do you have anything you'd like to add or provide or questions?
I was able to Zoom in at the VITA meeting where you originally presented it. And I just wanted to thank the task force and feel that the information that it is compiled is very comprehensive. And I was really pleased with the information and the results, the levels of the results. So I think it gives us a good base to build upon and then to create the public-private partnerships and the accountability portions to address needs going forward. So I just want to say thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, I just want to let the two of you know that the city is committed to VITA. We have done a levy for you folks every year. I think it's about $70,000 this year, maybe a little less. Sherry, what is it? I know it's a percentage. It's a percentage of our taxable base. So
$70,686.
that's what I thought. So we're committed to continue that. At least this council is, as long as we exist. So to let you know, and John, let you know that that's part of their program that we contribute to.
And then before we let you go, I guess I'd just like to say this is one example of what we were trying to achieve, for a long time. First VITA existed, then it didn't exist, then it had authority, then it didn't have authority, then it was effective slightly, then not effective. Now it is very effective. And working the partnerships with Revive Virginia and all of you and all those volunteers and citizens that become involved, this is a good example of how if a community comes together, what they can do to solve problems. So these survey results are very important to us. As we look forward to those to make improvements upon, we will certainly do so and be a valid partner with all of you moving forward. So thank you very much for everything you've done. This is an excellent presentation, and for everybody who participated in it.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Julianne, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you so much. I just, upon listening to you, I just was wondering if this would be something that we could add, maybe as an addendum or as an appendix, or I don't even know what the word is, into our comprehensive plan, so that we're taking steps to ensure that parts of that comprehensive plan are continuously being addressed. Would that be something that we could possibly add in, or just some of the elements of the survey?
Yes, if you hold that thought, well, I think Betsy Alvanti has a comment. Betsy?
Yeah, Counselor Paulson, if you remember when we started our task force work, what we were hoping to do was take the results of this survey and inform the comprehensive plan revisions going forward so that the city's comp plan reflects the information that we're using. And now with your new community planner or development planner, I think we're well poised to take the information and work with the city council and your city staff to get to the next step. So absolutely, yep.
Thank you. That sounds excellent.
And you make a good point, Councillor Paulson. This is a working document, this comprehensive plan constantly under revision. So thank you very much for all your hard work. Be safe. Have a great day.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Freely.
So like we've been in a contract with the Community Resource Development Crew. Like, so is that something that you worked in concert with, or is that a separate entity? Are they utilizing this data and the efforts that you put forth to move forward with the projects they have? Is it a coupled type of agreement?
Right. CRD helps us actually once we have a business owner who has applied for a grant, they shepherd them through the whole process. So they're really vital as far as getting them the information that they need. And they're aware, they come to the table with VITA as well, so they hear all of what we're talking about. I don't know, Britt and Betsy, if you have additional things about what CRD.
And some of the monies that were appropriated for those projects, such as over at commercial refrigeration, poppers and so on, that all came through the VITA funding or? Okay, good. All right, thank you.
We have 22 businesses that have applied for grants that will be doing improvements on their infrastructure. New roofs, windows, storefronts. So, I mean, that's where, as a building owner myself downtown, how do you, without this grant funding, it's really challenging to do it. So it's really vital. And to, Britt.
Thanks again. Thank you. Britt, there's a gentleman sitting behind Mr. Sullivan. I don't know what he's here for. He's on the agenda. I think this next proposal is going to be rather a lengthy discussion.
I don't think so. Betsy's the next one, SBDC.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm ahead. Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Betsy?
Yep. Thank you so much, Britt, for combining my presentations into one meeting. It's great to be able to be here in person and address the counselor, the city council. So as I said, I'm Betsy Olavanti. I'm the small business development consultant that services the Quad Cities. And my boss, Michael Kukloff, is on the phone, attending virtually. In case there's any questions and things, he's available as well. So quickly, I just want to bring to you each year a sort of a summary of the fact that because the city and VITA sponsors an SBDC or contributes to having an SBDC office focused on the city, and I believe the contribution is $6,000 annually through VITA. The results are astronomical for what happens then for small businesses in your community. So having somebody focused here, as you can see, in 2020, we worked with over 41 businesses in the 55792 zip code. So that is specific to your community. And that resulted in over $1.4 million worth of capital infusion into those businesses. So having somebody here focused right in the backyard, helping small businesses do what they need to do, answering questions, especially during this last year with the worldwide pandemic changing everything and, new HR rules, FFCRA, what are all these acronyms? How do I access what I need for my small business? All of those sorts of things. Having somebody here to help and handhold through some of those processes, is beneficial, and we've found that based on the data that we have. So, like I said, I just wanted to bring a quick little summary of your investment of 6,000 turns into 1.5 million of capital infusion into your city, and that just helps things move along. So we'll continue doing the work as long as you allow us to, and we like being a partner with the City of Virginia and with VITA and all the various organizations in town, because we think it just makes a stronger entrepreneurial ecosystem to help the work move forward.
Thank you. I just have one question about a potential conflict of interest from my perspective. So if an elected official like myself and partners were looking into investment in the downtown of a space, can me, as an elected official, participate in with the services that Betsy provides and to accommodate, a potential business opportunity in the downtown area?
Absolutely, simply because your contribution, while very valuable, is not significant to the project overall. Our budget is about $1 million to run the Northland Small Business Development Center in our region. So you contribute to help the services stay local, but that doesn't necessarily preclude you from working with us to access them.
Thank you very much. Okay, anybody else have any questions for Betsy? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
Then we have Jody Grabanowski, our Public Library Director, putting you in a different department, Jody, regarding approval to co-partner with the Lyric Center for the Arts on an application for NEA Big Reads.
Another great partnership opportunity. Jody, good morning.
Good morning. I am actually just here to, I need from the City Council approval to partner with the Lyric Center. They are going to spearhead this grant. We are offering in kind, and it's going to be in programming, PR. We're going to work with our Friends group. We're also working with Arrowhead Library System for the book that we chose, which is the best that we could do. It's a graphic novel. So we have everything from book lists to book discussions, requesting that the mayor do a proclamation if we get the grant at the start of the grant proposal, which would be fall, so probably September 21 through June 22. And then I just need documentation from all of you that we can go forward. Yes, and there is a 14-page document in here, but if you have more questions about specific programs, I will be more than happy to let you know
I
what they
browsed
are.
through it. It looks, reasonable based upon my ability to understand it. Counselor Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. I would move that we authorize city staff to enter into partnership for the grant purposes.
Okay, moved by Counselor Johnson. Is there support? Support by Counselor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. I will keep you posted if we get the grant.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
Jody? And then as the mayor alluded to, if it's possible, could we move up item number 6, the request from the East Range Sportsmen's and Conservation Club for funds for the skeet range project?
Sure.
I
Thank
believe the
you.
Dana Hilton and Virginia HRAs might take a little while. Sorry, Dana.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, please come forward, and for the record, if that green light is on, turn it on, and then state your name for the record, and welcome.
Yeah, John Stordahl, I'm president of the East Range Sportsman's Club and head coach of the Wasabi East Grand Ridge head coach.
Good morning.
Good morning. Basically, if you've gone through your things, I don't have a real good presentation, but would like to add, we started last year, we applied for a grant from the Minnesota DNR to help assist build a skeet range over one of our trap ranges. At the time, COVID shut everything down. In fact, our spring high school league got shut down because of the COVID. We were able to do it this fall. But as of now, with building materials, our cost blew in almost $11,000 over last year. Seeing as we are a 501c3 club and everybody works volunteer, we need additional funding, but we can acquire from other people. The town of White has contributed $5,000 as of now for.
I'm sorry?
The town of White has contributed $5,000 from the mining effects monies with the share program. I'm on schedule to back to White Lakes and Aurora as of now. I've contacted Boabic, Evelyn, and Gilbert. Have not heard back from them yet. But we would like to add additional sporting events for the high schools. That additional. We are now going to be limiting out probably our kids we can do at trap. So we have a full schedule. Volunteers, as you well know, you got your dirty dozen. We have 450 some members. About a dozen of us do the work.
Sure, certainly. Okay, we'll have some questions here. It is, before we move to the other counselors, I know there was a bill that was introduced a couple of years ago by Senator Bach, I think, where he was part of promoting this program for trap and skeet shooting, and there was funding available at the state level for that. My question is, have you received that funding?
We have acknowledgement. You do not get the grant monies until the project is complete.
Okay, so that grant money is available?
$12,500.
So $12,500 is what the grant money would be available upon completion of the project, right? And is a requirement of that? And I forget about reading when I read in the bill last year or the year before. Was there a matching fund requirement in that, or was that what it was, a matching fund requirement of how much? Equal? Equal amount. Okay, thank you very much.
And as you saw, the total now, we're over $40,000, so we're well beyond the matching.
Right, and okay, thank you for that. First, Councilor Bearable, and then Councilor Johnson. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah,
And
Mr.
then Councilor Freely.
Stordo, I am very supportive of this program. It's one of the fastest growing sports in the state of Minnesota. I'm an avid hunter. I've got kids that shoot, or grandkids that shoot, and this covers basically students from all over the range, not just in your area over there. As I know there's kids from Eva, kids from Virginia, all over. So this is something that our community should get behind, even if you don't like shooting. This is a sport that is very, very safe. There haven't been any accidents that I know of in Minnesota.
There's been no accidents. Safest high school sport in Minnesota.
Yep, and it's growing nationwide.
Yes.
So I'm very supportive of your program.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson. And then on to Councilor Freely.
Thank you, Mayor. Have you been in contact with the school districts?
Yes, we've been with the TRAP program now for, I believe, I didn't start it, but I grew up in working with kids. But I think the TRAP schedule has been like 6 years now. I am in contract with all the high school athletic directors.
I guess specifically, what are they going to contribute financially to the physical?
We are not part of the Minnesota State High School League. We are not sponsored by the schools. It is the Minnesota State High School Clay Target League.
And I understand that. I was very involved with the archery program several years ago through them, so none of the schools have committed any financial to benefit their students directly.
The schools are not allowed to contribute to this.
So, and I would be hesitant to make sure, and I guess I would ask this of our city attorney, what the city can actually contribute moving forward. So that's my one question. And then I'll ask my other question, and then that'll give Brian some time to think about this. Have you been in contact with the former Klein Cupoletti organization that used to shoot over here on the lake? That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, we have one of their traps, and yes, we have the members that used to shoot here belong to our club as of now.
Okay, thank you. If I could get an answer from Brian about what we can and can't do.
Brian, our city attorney is on the line, sir. Brian, any immediate thoughts or answers for the question that Councilor Johnson had?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'll do my best. My audio is breaking up a little bit here, but I think I understood Councilor Johnson's question to be what the city can actually contribute, and that's actually a very good question. there's some additional details that are needed before we can really find out what we can do, because what we run into is potentially an issue with public expenditure. Obviously, all city funds are public funds and have to be expended pursuant to certain laws in the state of Minnesota. And we're not, as a city, allowed to just give donations. There's certain limited exceptions to that, but generally it has to promote a public person and it has to benefit the community as a whole in order for it to be considered a public benefit. A lot of times there's confusion with charitable gambling laws that would allow us to contribute to, say, a youth activity. The public expenditure law is a little bit different, and so we would need to know more about the organization and more about exactly what it is we're asking to contribute money towards.
And just to expound on that, does a 501c3 have an effect on that decision?
It does not, Mayor. Generally, cities are prohibited, except for under very specific circumstances, for donating money to 501c3s.
Thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Pardon me. I thank Brian for that, and just to ask that we do get whatever information we need before we make a decision moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Friedli.
Out of curiosity, so there's a difference between trap and skeet. Can you explain that to me?
Trap is your shootout. Skeet, you're on. The trap, you sent behind 5 stations, and you shoot the target going out. In skeet, you've got 8 stations, and the targets come from a high house and a low house from both directions. And you follow with and take turns shooting at each station. Targets going one way, one the other way.
And each of those targets are the clay pigeon, so to speak? Okay. And so, like, the Mesabi East team and the Rockridge team do participate in Minnesota State High School League sanctioned activities?
Yeah, but this is not a Minnesota State High School.
The skeet
Work
is.
with the athletic directors. We do not go beyond what they would like us to do. That's why we shut down last spring. We didn't have to, but we did because that was their choice. We are not part of the Minnesota State High School League. They do support us. In fact, when this trap started, Mesabi East requested that we start a trap team.
So you don't have students that progress to regional and state tournament?
Every student that shoots is allowed to go to the state meet. Has been in Alexandria, which was not done last year.
And represent their high school? But the high schools are not having any involvement in this besides we're all for you?
They've been very supportive of us.
Verbally?
Verbally, I'm in email contact with all the all the athletic directors. Let them know what's happening, let them know costs, let them know the students.
And so this facility that you need to have built is located where?
In Aurora, on the mine dump.
Okay.
Red Top, if you know where that is.
I don't, but that's, so it's.
Back by the forestry.
Right, I know where that is.
And so, like, that's where you shoot trap as well?
Correct. It is owned by the town of White. The property is the town of White property.
So this is to make it accommodating to the skeet as well?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
We have rifle, we have a handgun range, we have a rifle range up to 600 yards. We have 3 trap houses. One of them's kind of in limbo right now, and we'd like to add the skeet program. We've had members. We have many members from Virginia.
Yeah, back in the day, my father was a member of the Klein Cupoletti program, and I was one of those kids that was in the little green house down there putting their traps
They're
out.
not allowed in there.
Yeah, I
We
wish
have
I would never have
automatic-
had to been there either, because it was frightening, but it was interesting. But thank you.
I share the same experience with my dad too as well. So, Councilor Paulson, do you have anything that you'd like to add? Any questions you might have?
I've been just listening, and I think some of my questions were clarified. Number one was the location. So this range is actually located in the city of Aurora. Is that correct?
No, it's not within the city limits. It's just outside the city limits. It's owned by the town of
Just
White.
outside the city. Okay. And then would it be something that we could maybe, after we get further information, maybe act as a fiscal agent? And maybe that's a question for Brian, if the IRRB would be willing to give any dollar amount that it would keep the city at an arm's length?
We looked into IRRB funding for a couple other projects, and it's really tough. They're way more strict than the state. Like I say, we have Minnesota State funding from the DNR right now, and I believe once with that funding, the IRRB, I believe, would be completely out of it.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I think this warrants more research on our half to get some more information to make the right decision, to make a decision on what we can and cannot do. But before we do that, Councilor Bearable had his light on. Oh, go ahead, sir.
Can I have one thing?
Yes, please.
If your city could not contribute to it, how can Aurora, the city of Aurora and the city of White Lakes contribute to the project? So
Yeah, and we don't know that. We got to get a legal opinion on how that works because, how mining effects tax works, and we've had some issues with.
it's what they've been contributing is the mining effects money where you have a joint project.
Mhm.
You can't spend the money on your own city, you have to do it with another city. And that's kind of, we don't need lots, we just need everybody to contribute a little bit to help us.
And I'm fully supportive of that, is if that, we're going to have to do our due diligence. The question that you asked, I don't have an answer to that, why they can and why we may not be able to, but we're going to have to research that to see if we can. And so you're asking for some funds, and so we want to find out and do our due diligence and give you an answer if it's possible to move forward. So, Councilor Bearable.
Just one question. With the Mesquite, does the school provide any transportation for these kids, or are they on their own?
No, they're on their own.
On their own, okay.
They're not allowed to bring shotgun or shells to school property, so they have to go home and get their guns.
Okay, gotcha.
We do have some guns available for students that don't have. I've bought 2 myself, and the other coaches bought 2, and we have a couple more contributed.
It's not like the old days where we used to take our guns and go hunting right after school.
Oh, yeah, laws have changed, and I appreciate the chance to present this to you, and hope you find anything that's ever. Got my address and phone number, so.
And I'd like to, I'll get it from her because I think that if you need another firearm donate, I can certainly arrange that on a personal level. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. Have you been in contact with the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association?
No. We were contacted last year by the Minnesota Deer Hunters Association, and he contacted me, and we were looking at it. He's talking a couple $100 donation we needed for youth, and I was thinking of the Minnesota Pheasant Association also. That's unlimited. But being we're not a group for pheasants, duck hunters, and none of the members are, it's hard to pull money from bigger projects for little ones.
Well, like I see, you're part of the Dirty Dozen, right?
Yes.
As you're here to all, and you're trying to get this thing built, I completely understand that. Let us do some research in that regard, sir, and then Britt has your email and phone number. We'll certainly get back to you. And we promise you that we'll do our due diligence research to see what can be done on a legal perspective.
Yes, if I wasn't retired, I couldn't do this.
Well, no doubt about it. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. We have Dana Hilton patiently waiting for item number 5, the Virginia HRA review the 2021 Washington Manor budget.
Good morning, once again.
Good morning, Mayor and councilors. So I sent out a packet. It includes a proposed budget along with some other information about rental rates and possible capital needs. And so Jesse is going to start by just reviewing the proposed budget with you, if that's okay.
Very good. I just want to say before you begin your presentation, the documents you provided, it was amazing what you've done in looking at what your needs are, the capital needs, and I was actually shocked by some of the work that still needs to be done. And you've done your due diligence. It's a great packet of information. So thank you for doing that. Okay. Sir.
All right. Good morning.
Morning.
This is the Washington Manor proposed operating budget for April 1st, 2021 to March 31st, 2022. So the first column in white is the current operating budget we're working off of for fiscal year end 3/31/21. last time we were here, we increased the rents by 1.5%. The next 5 columns to the right are the proposed fiscal year end 3/31/22 budgets. The first one with the light blue column is a no increase in rents. The green is a 1% increase. Purple is a 1.5. The red is a 2% increase. And the last one is raising cable $4 and parking $5. If you go down to the total operating revenues, you can see in the current budget, it's at $683,083. And in the column over with the no increase, it's at $661,492. So the main difference is the amount of vacancies. So in the current budget, we projected 4 vacancies per month. And in the proposed budget, we're projecting 5 per month. This is because in December 2020, we have 5 vacant units right now, and we expect those to carry over into this coming fiscal year because not a lot of people want to move in the wintertime. And with the current pandemic we're in, I think we'll have a harder time filling those open units. You go down to admin expenses. So with all these expenses, we kind of cut them a little bit because we knew we'd have higher vacancies this year. So total admin expenses are coming in at $46,215, down about $1,000 from last year. Total utility expenses, $78,450, down about $4,000 from last year. Total maintenance expenses, $84,660, up about $2,500 from last year. This is, if you look at the cable TV contract, it was $31,050 this year compared to $26,500. We're projecting a 9% increase from Mediacom. In February 2020, we had 11% increase from them. February 2019, we had a 9% increase. In February 2018, we had another 11% increase, so 31% over 3 years. Total general expenses are coming in at $29,000. Kept the capital improvements at $50,000. Net operating income for no increase is $273,167, a 1% increase. $279,323, 1.5 increase. $282,402, 2% increase. $285,480. And if we raise cable $4 and parking $5, we get a net operating income of $277,417. So if you factor in the debt payments throughout the year of $276,030, we get a net loss for a no increase of $2,863. For a 1% increase, we get a net income of $3,293. 1.5% increase, we get a net income of $6,372. 2% increase, we get $9,450, and if we raise cable and parking, we get a net income of $1,387. Does anyone have any questions on that?
I have one quick question. How many, these parking spaces obviously are underground parking, right? Or garage parking, or the open parking? So how many underground parking spaces do you have?
26.
26, and so you have more than 26 residents, right? Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Mayor, and I may have asked you this question the last 4 years, but why do we include the cable? What, as we're moving forward with streaming and Dish and all that stuff, so why do we include cable, and what is each apartment's cable bill moving right now?
So cable actually isn't in the rental rate. Cable is an addition to the rental rate. and we get mass price. So it's actually less than what it would be if every tenant had to go out and buy their cable. So a lot of tenants, I hate to speak for them, but we do get a lot of feedback that tenants like that because it's not as much as like the private homeowner that has to go get their own cable. Honestly, it's also always just been set up that way. And if we take it away, we also need to think about the different types of setups and the different wiring that we'd probably have to install in the building so that we don't have 90 dishes, well, I shouldn't say 90, 64 dishes, out on the building. So you need to take that into account as well, that can also come with some cost to try to set that up and figure that out beforehand.
How does,
Oh, sorry. The
How-
other thing, sorry.
no, go right ahead.
The other thing I just
apologize.
want to make a note of is that your cable on this budget will never totally even out because we get a bulk rate. So there is some overhead costs to that, right? Because during vacancies, we still have to pay for those units, and then we pay for that on the caretaker's unit as well.
I appreciate that you specifically said how much that we just got another notice, I think, a couple weeks ago that they're changing and raising, and we've repeatedly asked them to come here to discuss the quality of equipment they're using, and we're still waiting to get a firm. So we will make sure we invite you to that meeting when hopefully a qualified representative from MediaCom comes to talk to us. Then when the residents have a cable modem, is that something they pay for extra, or how does that play into the bulk rate?
So they're provided with their TV, call it a modem or whatever you
Okay.
call it. Sorry, I'm not big on the cable thing, but they are provided that for their TV along with a remote. And then there's also, if they leave and they leave with those things, then they have to pay that from their security deposit.
What about for Wi-Fi, the
Does
individual?
not include Wi-Fi.
They pay for that separately?
Pay for that and hook that up themselves separately. Whether they go with MediaCom, CenturyLink, something else like that, they need to figure that out on their own.
I'm already hearing, I'm on a fixed income, I can't afford an extra $5 a month, which I respect, but I too am on a fixed income. Just because I'm 45 doesn't mean I have unlimited capabilities of increasing my income. That's all I have for now. Thank you for answering my question.
I will just like one comment on that too. I think that the city has done a good job in keeping their rental increases as low as possible. Increasing the rent between 1% and 2%, while nobody wants to do that, especially for seniors, right?
I got a question.
Is a pretty low cost considering all the other costs that do increase year to year.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor.
Councilor Bearable.
I have a question of you, Dana. We're going to be reworking the streets within Pine Mill Court, correct? And it's on the schedule.
We're happy about that.
Yeah, but every place else we put streets in, there's a cost of an assessment. Now, does your organization, I didn't see anything in here, we've talked about it at committee, but is there any extra funds in your HRA funds to either pay a small assessment or something? Because everybody else in town is going to have to pay an assessment.
So I can't answer that on the spot. I think that we'd have to go back. We do, because it's public housing, it's a little bit different, of course. And because we pay payment in lieu of taxes, we have a separate aged agreement from many, many years ago that I think that we would probably need to look at together.
The one where you pay a percentage of?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just on a side note too, I mean, you probably already know this, but the state law says that we have to provide a 5% pilot. And over in our public housing units, we provide 10% because we're so thankful for all the city services that are provided to our apartments.
Yeah. The only reason I'm asking that question, it's a disparity if we're charging all the rest of the individuals in the community an assessment. So if we can go back, Britt, and look at that, we've had quite a heavy discussion about yours, but we're going to do the work. So it's on the schedule, so you don't have to worry about that. It's going to get done. Okay, but let's take a look at that, Britt, with them and look at that, because I believe it was 1% way back for the HRA that We allowed a levy on, didn't we, Sherry? Oh, okay, okay. All right, we'll go research that, okay? Okay, thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Counselor Bearable. Counselor Freely.
So from a operational and managerial standpoint, given the columns you've presented here, what do you feel is the recommendation you would have to make for continuing in the mode that we need to on behalf of the residents of that facility?
So I think, okay, purely my recommendation. I think that you have to look at a few things. Obviously, like Jesse said, we are increasing the vacancy in this year's budget. We are just finding, seniors are not wanting to move during COVID. So when we're having some people exit, we are not filling those units as fast. We are trying other things, but I think that that is just what it is at this time. I'm hoping for a recovery maybe halfway through the fiscal year, and that gets better, but I think we have to plan for it not getting better this coming year. So that being said, if it were me, I would look at this and I would say, okay, we've got this issue, cable continues to go up. I don't think like this is something that you probably want to talk about every single year. If it were me, I would say, let's approve changing cable as it increases and not have it be part of just the budget discussion. So have it be a flat fee every time Mediacom comes out with an increase, no matter what time of the year it is, we just automatically increase the rate by that amount and do the per unit cost. And then on top of that, I would probably still say you need to increase your rents by 1.5% at a minimum. And that's also me saying that knowing that you will not be able to fund some of the capital improvements that you do need on that building with what you have right now in reserves. And
That 1.5 doesn't reflect what you said with regard to the separate costs of the cable, that correct?
right, I would say 1.5 plus
Plus.
a cable increase.
And that's anticipated to be what?
We anticipated in here 9%. So if you wanted to be safe, you could just say, to charge the cable rate of whatever it is passed on right now by Mediacom, and then any increases that they have continually, change that cable rate as it changes for you.
And that's added into the rent then?
That's on top of the rent.
On top of
So they pay a rent, the 1.5% goes on the rent increase alone, plus they pay cable, and if they have underground parking, they pay that in addition. And you'll see right after the budget, you'll see the rent increases and the range of rents in your packet as well. And then you'll see the vacancies. And one other thing I want to point out, you'll also see a budgeted income statement. I believe Councilor Johnson asked last year that we include this in the packet this year, just to also give you an idea of where we're at through in the fiscal year that we're in right now. This is 8 months ending November 30th. A few other things that I think are just kind of always helpful to know for comparables right now. Over at Laurentian Manor, their rents, the rents that we have set over there range from $799 to $1,077. We're increasing parking over there to $50 a month, and we are increasing cable to $42 a month. Lincoln Place is another good comparable, I think, over in Eveleth. Their rents for a one-bedroom start at $899 a month. Their two bedrooms are at $1,099 a month. Similar setup, tenants pay their electric. Their parking is $35, and their cable is also paid by their tenants. So just to give you some comparisons too about where Washington is falling in with rent rates. You're still pretty competitive in comparison.
For me, as the discussions move forward, for me, I think increasing the parking is out because not everybody pays. I mean, only if you have a garage. So, I mean, so I think looking at the other issues about, I agree, the cable, make the adjustment for the cable, that's the cost that you can't control. And so that's a separate above and beyond the rent. I get that. And so I would be, at this point in time, in favor of moving towards some kind of an increase in the rent as you're requesting. But before we go to Councilor Johnson, Councilor Paulson, do you have any questions or comments moving forward so far?
No, Mayor, I'm just listening and I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor.
and then Counselor Barnzelli.
So to be clear, people don't have to have cable.
Have to have cable.
They have to have the cable. Okay. I'm in favor of what you suggested, an automatic increase. If, as MediaCom says, we're raising it 9%, they see that. We're experiencing the same thing when it comes to the garbage rates from St. Louis County, as you are well aware of. Your bill goes up when our bill goes up. So I think that would be logical, is if MediaCom, because then maybe these folks, these are the letter writers of our community who can write to MediaCom and go, seriously, this is not okay that you continually, it's a monopoly, and they can do what they want, and that's been a frustration for a lot of people for a long time. I think that increasing the rent, the 1.5%, or I think I looked at 1% or what, when it comes down to it, it's, what did I figure, between 7 and 11, give or take, dollars a month. And unfortunately, that's also, inflation happens. We still need to maintain the buildings. We still need to pay somebody to vacuum the hallways and to shovel, take care of the sidewalks around. That's still part of your responsibility, and I know that you do the best you can with that as well. So I guess at this point, because we are just talking about Washington Manor, that an increase, especially looking over the history, and the comparables too, that I appreciate knowing that this one is probably, it sounded like it was pretty much slowest of what's around. So I'd be looking at the chart. I need to make sure I'm in the right column. I'd be at a 1% with increasing the cable based on what MediaCom does, so that you don't have to keep coming back every year. And if it jumps 30% sometime, and you can't come back to us for a year to fix that, that's a huge loss, and that's eating away at other stuff. So that's where I am, 1% with the variable based on MediaCom. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a quick point before we go to Counselor Barnzelli and then Counselor Freely. Just to clarify, Washington Manor is not a subsidized apartment complex, or is it?
It is not.
It is not. Thank you. Counselor Barnzelli?
Thank you. Did you tell us how many vacancies when you first came, or how many are full? Are they?
We have 5 vacancies right now. So you can, and if you look in your packet, you'll also see year-to-date, calendar year-to-date, or for the last calendar year, of all the vacancies.
The last
5 is
2
a good
months.
number.
Yeah, the last 2 months has been 5, or earlier it's been smaller.
But
Right.
3-4 years ago, when you came to us, it was 10 or 11 or 12 out, wasn't it?
Yes.
And Councillor Johnson doesn't like it, but I like to see you guys coming here annually, because part of it, the city runs it. I think we need to be briefed on what's going on annually.
We're still going to have to come back for an annual budget and any rental increases, and have an operating budget approved by you, even if you approve changing cable rates in between.
I'd like to get cable right out of Virginia, Minnesota. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the point that Counselor Johnson was making, if I may speak on his behalf, that the proposal he's looking at, and I kind of concur that if right now, say the current rate of cable is $31 and some cents a month, and then all of a sudden in March or April, they raise it 9%, that we would be giving the authority to the HRA to automatically adjust the cable rates to coincide with that increase, so it doesn't eat away at the budget. But they still have to come back on an annual basis and talk about the other needs and then the budget moving forward. Does that clarify? Okay, thank you. Councilor Freely?
Yeah, I like your recommendation of the 1.5%. I mean, just doing rough math at the very best, over the course of the last 20-plus years, there's been about a 30% increase for the cost of that there's been 30% increase in cable in the last 3 years. I mean, you can make that comparison. I know it's apples to oranges in some regard, but it's something to go by. Within 3 years, they can raise theirs 30%. Takes us 20 years on the backs of these people to be able to get that increase into their rent. But in any event, I think the 1.5 plus that cost of the cable increase as a separate entity would be reasonable, given the other increases we've had over the course of the last couple decades. From my standpoint, it's not unreasonable, the 1.5.
And I think if you take a look at you have this chart here in your presentation, over the last 23 years, the high range was $795, right? And the high range now is $1,072. So that increase over a 23-year period is pretty minimal. I mean, it's easier for me to say that because I don't live there and I don't pay the rent. However, in order to live in a housing complex that has the maintenance that's necessary to make a comfortable living for people in that regard, you have to be able to accommodate that through your budget. And I concur. I mean, I certainly. Battery went dead. I certainly wouldn't want to burden the homeowners there. And that's why I asked the question: is this subsidized housing or not? It's not, obviously. So, I think I agree. I mean, the 1.5% is, between 1 and 1.5 isn't that big of a increase. The cable issue, I think I'm good with, and I'm good with the 1.5 as well. So, anybody else have any questions or comments? Once again, Councillor Paulson.
No, Mayor, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Councillor Bearable?
You need a motion on this today, correct? Okay. I'm going to move that we go with the 1.5% increase, and with the cable being as needed from increases that may occur during the year.
Okay, moved by Councillor Bearable. Is there support?
I'll support that. Paulson.
Okay, supported by Councillor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Is there any further? Thank you. Councillor Johnson?
I would like to request that we make those separate, just for paperwork reasons, that we do, because the cable is a long-term fix for this. And like we said, every year it needs to come back for the rent increase. So I would request that they be two separate motions.
Okay.
Okay, I can do that, Mayor.
Would you, Pam, we're going to reconfigure the motion on the floor to break that into two separate motions. So the first motion, go ahead, Councillor Bearable.
The first motion would allow the HRA to increase the rent for the Washington Manor by 1.5%.
A motion by Councillor Bearable to make a motion to increase the monthly rent at the Washington Manor, 1.5% increase. Is a support from Councillor Paulson?
I'll move to amend my support and support the motion on the floor.
Okay, support motion number 1. Thank you, Councillor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay. Pam, would you please take the roll call?
Marable,
Oh, yes.
Reedley,
Yes.
Johnson.
No.
I'm sorry, I did not hear that.
No.
Paulson,
Yes.
Aaron Sally,
Yes.
Huckabee.
Yes, motion passes 6-1. Thank you. The motion number 2? Motion passes, thank you. Councillor Beyondich is absent, so it would be 4-2. No.
5-1.
5-1.
Okay, Larry Cuffey's math is not good. And I'll admit that immediately. So motion passes 5-1. Thank you for the clarification. Okay, looking for motion number 2.
I'll make that motion too, as long as I made the first one together. So I'll move that the HRA for the Washington Manor be allowed to increase cable rates as the increases come from MediaCom.
Or
Moved by Counselor Baraboo, supported by Counselor Johnson, to give the authority to the HRA to make adjustments to the MediaCom cable rate as the increases occur over the course of the fiscal year. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So would you also like me to talk a little bit about some capital improvements now, or?
I think that some of us would like to hear that. Yes, please do. All right, thank you.
Okay, so later in your packet, there was also a memo with some information which has been presented to you in the past. But on the first part of the memo, it's just an update on the first page about the work that we did last spring and summer over at Washington Manor. So back in April, you had approved moving forward with some capital projects over there that addressed the window settling issue on the addition part of the building. So we replaced some of the exterior sills. If you remember, we were having water, those sills were popping off and we were having some issues with water going behind those bricks there. So it addressed those. We put in, replaced the drywall screws that we're currently holding in the window because they weren't properly installed in the first place. Cleaning and painting the CMU on the bottom and tuck pointing at the base of the brick and the window sills at the bottom of the wall on the addition. So the council had set aside a construction budget and a contingency of a little over $105,000. Final cost came in at a little over $96,000. I just threw a few pictures in there so you can kind of see. If you went by, you probably did notice, especially probably on the bottom block section, that's where you notice it really the most. But of course, all the windowsills, and hopefully that keeps the water from going back behind the brick anymore and doesn't create any other issues there. So back in April, I also told you, though, about some additional stone and terracotta issues that are on the older part of the building, or the original school. So these were issues that we knew were coming up when we did kind of I call it like a mini physical needs assessment that had been presented to the council some time ago, just so you know what's up and coming and what other capital improvements in the long term will need to be done. But we paid some special attention last year because the upper level stone and terracotta is probably not, it's not in the greatest shape. And obviously there is some worry there about its condition, it's high up, whether it continues to deteriorate, that causes somewhat of a liability for the city, those types of things. So this again is just a reiteration. It's a lot of the same information that was presented. You can see attached. There are just some estimates of what those repairs might be. You can see in the packet there was phase 1, 2, and 3, which addresses the building from the top down. Phase 1 is the very top, the terracotta that I'm talking about. Phase 2, the middle section. Phase 3, the bottom section. It's a specialized type of work on that type of building too. So the costs that we have right now are purely estimates from a contractor that our architect worked with just to get a roundabout idea. They by no means are any kind of final cost. And right now, as you know, going out and bidding is kind of all over the place with different costs. So the main part, obviously, of what I wrote in here is that it's obvious that there's not enough money in reserves to do this project. So I just really put it out on the bottom again. The options are you spend down the Washington Manor reserves to a point that you'd not have 4 months of operating expenses in your reserve fund, but it should be noted there's still not enough money to even do that and complete phase 1 of the project. Obviously, subsidizing with city funds is always something that is discussed, and then continuing to save over the next Washington budget year, keeping an eye on what goes on with the terracotta on top. I will say, though, just so you know, too, I did we did notice some additional efflorescence on the north side of the building as well. So that tells you that there's moisture getting on some of the brick facade there. Whether that's coming from above, I mean, I am definitely not the person that can tell you that for sure, but there's some moisture getting in the bricks. So it's coming out, there's some salt deposits and things that are coming out as it's drying up.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick question, we'll go to Councilor Johnson. The quick question I have is that hypothetically, if the city didn't own the building, and say, for the sake of argument, that HRA owned the building, okay? If that was the case, would you have a better opportunity for funding from other sources to do the repair work of phase 1, 2, and 3, just for the sake of argument? Probably not.
Not if we kept it as a market rate senior building.
Right, that was my next question, so thank you for answering that. Councilor Johnson? And then on to Councilor Friedli.
Thank you, Mayor. Britt, are there other city buildings that could benefit from the type of work that's being done at the Washington Manor? Like, I'm thinking City Hall, the library. So, and my logic here is that if we're gonna do this, maybe we can plan out far enough. I know it needs to get done. Maybe we hire a contractor cooperatively and the costs go down because they're already here and they're here for 2 months instead of 1 month or something like that.
You know we need tuck pointing done at the library and City Hall sometime soon. It wasn't planned for this year, but it's something on our radar. Yeah, there is that.
I mean, I can just think a contract, because it's a specialized contractor, probably same specialization. And if there's only one mobilization cost, I'm learning these words in city council, then maybe we can share some savings. So that was just my thought is eventually we're going to have to do it on other places within town. And maybe there's some other privately owned buildings too. I don't know how that would work, but that, again, cutting down sharing of the mobilization costs could allow for a better deal for the community as a whole, or even some of the other cities around here.
Probably also especially with more specialized work. And there's not a ton of companies that do a lot of tuck pointing, especially on buildings like Washington Manor.
And it could make it more worth their while to come if there was a conceded effort that Evelyn has some work that needs to be in Gilbert, Mountain. I'm just trying to think of that bigger problem solving that, if they could come up here for 3 months during the summer and have work for 3 months, that could be more of an enticement for them, contractor, to give us a good bid.
A quick question. So you've laid out phase 1, 2, and phase 3 based on critical need, right? What's the most critical need that you have?
Yes.
And so we don't want phase 2 and 3 to get critical to the point where phase 1 is at. So we have to take a look and make some decisions and moving forward. And I know that you just got a bid from one contractor just to give us a ballpark figure.
Right, not even a bid, more of just an
Just a
estimate.
bulk, yeah, just a bulk, yeah, I understand.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Friedli.
We're in this local mode here where we have buildings like this and of this age. And the general consensus has been, especially after evaluations by professionals, is to tear down and build new. I mean, that's been the case for next door here, the MEC, et cetera. And I've not always agreed with necessarily that was the case. In this, though, when you look at patching, repointing, repairing, recalking, and so on, that's kind of surface repairs as opposed, how deep did that water go and what kind of structural damage is there below the point of where you're going to be recalking or repatching. That's a critical concern as well. And so my point would be, if you invest $250,000 into doing this, then what additional lifespan do you get before you're having to climb back up there and do it again? Is it going to be 5 years, 3 years, 15 years, 25? Who knows, Not to mention, we don't know how deep that damage goes beyond the surface of where it seeped initially. And the truth is, in this entire town, there's been all kinds of residents, 700 some odd, that have had to put a whole bunch of new money into very old property anyhow because of the change in the utilities in the city. And not to mention, similar types of repairs were just recently done, were they not, at the office building of the public utilities? And I don't know if this was the same company or not, but it'd be probably advantageous to find out who did that, because it seems like they did a really nice job. And it was pretty like efficiently done, it appears. And it seems like there's something being done over on Sixth Avenue as well on the public utilities that's similar. I'm not sure what they're doing there, but it's having to do brickwork and so on, tuck pointing, I'm not sure. But, I mean, the reality is you have people living there. We've maintained this building on behalf of those residents of the city of Virginia. It's kind of like you don't have a choice but to continue to do what you need to do to make it livable and safe, for that matter, when you have things that could fall from being cracked and water damaged. It's just, where do you find the money and how much do you do per year? And like I say, my biggest concern is then what do you get in terms of longevity from that patch and repair? And at what point then do you have to abandon that building because it's just becoming cost prohibitive to keep dumping money into it? So in any event, that's just my spiel. I'm not even sure what to tell you other than the fact it needs to be done, but are we just putting new money into old and continuing to have to do that year after year after year until we have to look at some other option for these people and where to live?
And I also think that that's a fair comment in consideration of the other capital needs that were identified for the whole property.
And I think Councilor Johnson's suggestion, if there are other projects that the city is, they're imminent to be done, then we should be looking in terms of pooling those resources to be able to get them here and get a better price for multiple projects as opposed to one. So that'd be a good idea as well.
And so I know that there are other options out there as opposed to tuck pointing and doing those kind of things. I do know that there was a project down in the metro area where it was all brick. They needed tuck pointing, and what they did was they caulked all the cracks and they re-sided. They put blath in there. They insulated a little bit. They re-sided. They redid the whole thing with the brick still intact, but it protected and weatherized that entire facility with a guarantee that the last, 75 years or whatever it is. So there are other options other than tuck pointing and repairing. The question is this a SHPO issue? Is there a historic component to that? So I would like to see you take a look at, you have an architectural firm that you've consulted with before to see if there are other options and if those options are cost effective and feasible to do so. And can you bring back some other options that would comply with the code requirements, comply with the SHPO if that's requires and all those kind of things. So maybe there's an alternative way in which to repair or replace as opposed to tuck pointing at the cost, which is astronomical, and I know it's going to cost a lot more than that only because I know that my relatives who do this for a living they retired, and it was tedious work, expensive work. So that being said, I'd like to see it come back with some other options, if you could, and talk about it here. So I'm looking for any other questions or comments from the staff moving forward. Is this something that we can continue to work on? I mean, phase one is something we have to make a decision on relatively soon.
Depending upon if and when you want to move forward with it. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about bidding and going into this summer or fall, then you have to make a decision soon.
So I would ask that we look at more options in the near term through your architectural firm, or consult with to see if there's something more, other option that's available for ensuring the safety of the residents that live there and improving and increasing the lifespan of that building. Councilor Barabo.
Yeah, I'm just thinking outside the box here. John, is this an area where you could assist and help? Britt, since we own that building, is that a privy in your expertise, or would you need to go out and find people too? Pardon?
Asking about financially or about structurally?
Just structurally, and find, maybe find some bids that are out there other than,
We certainly can go out for RFPs and just see what the price is. I had Matt do an estimate for City Hall and the library it must have been a couple years ago now, that I can have him revamp, and we can certainly just see what prices are if we,
that's fine too.
Especially if we're talking about possibly cooperatively bidding.
And then find out the cost, what the utility spent and what they did, so as some type of a comparable or measuring stick. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's do that.
Can I ask just real quick?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Councilor Philippe.
Sherry, what do we annually budget for like maintenance, building maintenance and repair?
You want me to answer that? Okay. So in the budget, so we have a few different line items that have a maintenance and repairing in them, but most notably, there's capital improvements down towards the bottom of the first page of the budget. It's $50,000. Of that, about $25,000 goes into things like replacing the flooring and different things like that. About 25 of it ends up to be set aside for other types of larger projects.
So this would have to be money that comes from some other source.
Yes, the majority of it.
And does IRRB even consider projects that are older in existing buildings, or is it only on new construction? Maybe if it had historical value, or, okay, all right.
And I know they have with public housing, but this is not public housing.
Okay,
Yeah, but they did, I mean, they have, of course, Britt and I have talked about this, they have contributed years ago, but it kind of goes in waves about what priorities are.
yeah, I think we would have to lobby on behalf of the preservation of existing buildings in an old community such as ours that's providing housing for people that are primarily older people.
So let me just throw this out.
CBDG.
So I'll just throw this out too. If that were the case and we were putting together a budget for something like that, then it would be my recommendation to look at that as an entire building project and not a phase 1, 2, and 3 project.
Okay, so do a little research and keep us informed. Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from the council with respect to this? Councilor Johnson?
Thank you. Is it feasible that we reach out to Mountain Iron and the other communities just to see if they're even interested? Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Well, can I just bring up one other
Yes,
thing?
Councilor Freely, yeah.
Not to prolong it, but I mean, we have, I don't know what's coming down across the street from where I live. Like, is the technical building coming down? I mean, the point being is like, there's a lot of older buildings now that are gonna be abandoned, not unlike Washington would have been had it not been utilized in this different capacity. And so there are a number of, historically significant, long-standing buildings that are historical to this town that we have to start thinking in terms of, are we gonna preserve them? Are we tearing them? And if we tear them down, where are we putting all this rubble? When I think about it, from Gilbert to Evelyn to Virginia, it's like, holy cow. So John, welcome back home to your 100-plus-year-old community. But I mean, that's one of the things we have to start looking at is like, what are we gonna be doing with all these things that have been standing for 115-plus years? And now we're abandoning them for new, but they're still there. So they need to be utilized or demolished and preferably utilized in some capacity. I mean, there's people that need places to live, for one thing.
And of course, you also, I mean, at this location, you're having one building that's probably, 100 years old? Versus the addition, which we think of as new, but was already built a number of years ago. So that might also be a consideration that you want to look at is, can we do something with the addition part, even if you're maybe not going to continue to preserve the school part?
For continued sake of conversation too, like for example, there's all kinds of problems that have happened, like for example, at the Southridge School, at the Northwood School up in Cook, where they've had buckling and, there's been damage that's occurred just in these new buildings. The new construction just doesn't have the integrity of a technical building or a Roosevelt building or any of these other buildings in town. So just because you build new doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be long-standing and long-lasting. Yeah, Not to mention, I woke up this morning with my brand-new heating system, and it's set at 72, and it was down to 67, so the thing's just not pumping like it should, and it's brand new, so we had to put on space heaters this morning, which was like, oh, but that's just the reality. You can invest in brand new, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna be as good or better by any stretch from what you had previously, so, in any event.
So real quickly, hindsight being 2020, not to second guess what was done many, many years ago, but there was an opportunity for a private investment in that Washington Manor but the city chose to take on that subject. So I know there's some restrictions. I know we've talked about it, and it's, I think, a conversation for later on down the road. And that is the sale of that Washington Manor, whether it be to the HRA, whether it be to a private investor, whatever the case may be. This is an ongoing saga that we're continuing to have to pump money and funding into the area when private investors or private ownership of that property, regardless. I'm sure there's some hoops we need to follow. How much money do we owe in that facility, which is significantly decreasing, making it viable for somebody to buy it. We're never going to recover the costs associated with our investment by far, but at the same time, we can make some adjustments to our to whether or not we really should be in the rental business and those kind of things, and still be able to have some kind of a way to preserve the buildings that you described, Councilor Friedlieb. So, thank you very much, Dana and
Jesse.
Jesse. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Gil. Take care.
Next item on the agenda is under Buildings and Grounds, item number 7, review the temporary land license with Ted McHugh for driveway access on Sky Harbor seaplane-based property.
And I was going to talk to Councilor Johnson about this because we were on the Airport Authority together, and I don't remember us talking about this resolution, but we did, I think, the two of us make a motion a couple of meetings ago, to allow him to access that, as his driveway, which has been utilized for a long period of time. And we asked that some kind of agreement be worked up. Councilor Johnson?
I would agree, Mayor. I would ask that this be tabled until the Airport Commission has the ability to look at the contract and then move it forward to the the councils.
And we did give him 6 months to utilize that until we came up with an agreement. So we have time to push that back over to the Airport Authority for discussion. That makes sense?
You need a formal.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Councilor Paulson.
Thank you. So upon reading this license agreement, and I would agree to table until the Airport Authority has their meeting or decides upon this. But my question is, it's a licensing agreement, and is that because it's with the FAA and instead of an actual easement?
No, it's not with the.
Actual license.
It's not with the FAA. The Sky Harbor is a privately owned facility that was conveyed to the Airport Authority. And the purpose of that is for planes to come in and out of there, gas up if they want, and then change from wheels to floats. That was the purpose of that. And so during the course of that private ownership, this gentleman owned a house there, and he was allowed under the private ownership to utilize part of the dirt runway, or taxiway, which is not approved by the FAA or the state of Minnesota as a licensed, runway, or taxiway. And so the old Airport Authority was going to deny him access to his garage and on his property, and he has to use that taxiway area to do that. So at the Airport Authority meeting, Councilor Johnson and I think made the motion, and I approve or I support one or the other, to give him the opportunity to continue to utilize that for a period of 6 months until we can come up with some type of an agreement moving forward. Now, this agreement is of concern to me, and I think also of concern to Councilor Johnson. We won't be able to discuss this at the next Airport Authority meeting. So I think, does that help at all?
Well, no, Miles, yes, I kind of was aware of the issue, but I think my question is, it's being proposed as a license agreement, and I'm just wondering why it wouldn't come forward as an actual easement.
Yeah, that's our question as well. That's why we'd like to table that, move it to the Airport Authority for further discussion.
Okay.
Mayor, if I may?
Yes, Brian. Yes, Mr. Lindsay?
To speak to this question about why it may come forward as a license agreement, typically a party would use a license agreement as opposed to an easement agreement if it wanted to retain some flexibility and the ability to eliminate the access. A license is freely revocable, whereas an easement is a more permanent legal concept. And so that may speak to the issue of why the license agreement is being used as opposed to an easement.
Thank you for that, Brian. I appreciate that.
Perfect, thank you. And I think what begs, I would like to see this tabled moving forward so we can discuss it a little bit further at the Airport Authority to make it an official part of the record of the minutes and then bring it back, number one. And number two, I think what begs to another discussion at the Airport Authority meeting is whether or not Sky Harbor is an asset to the airport or not. So I think we're going to have to take a look at that too, whether that's even something the Airport Authority should even own, based upon a number of reasons. So we'll be entering into that discussion as well. So we need a motion to table and revert and move it back to the Airport Authority? Councilor Johnson?
Seeing nobody else is light on, I would move to table for further information.
Okay, moved by Councilor Johnson to table. Is there support? Support by Councilor Barnzelli. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is to appoint members to the Public Safety Center Architect Firm Selection Committee. We had taken statement of qualifications for the new Public Safety Center site. We need an architect to help us finish up our USDA funding forms and to help us get past, we're still getting quotes for phase 2, but to help us get past the point of acquisition and such, 2 point of acquisition and environmental. We received 4 firms. So we need to know if it's the entire council or if we're going to do just committee members or how you want to do the selection committee.
We all pipe in. I'd like to see staff, our community development director. Community development planner. I'll get that right. Community development planner. And maybe somebody from, it's a building issue, so maybe somebody from Building and Grounds, some representatives from Building and Grounds to sit in and sit in and talk about that. That would be my thoughts. Anyone else? Councilor Johnson?
Would this include Chief Lewis, or is that what we're trying to determine?
We had put in the statement for qualifications, it will include a police and fire rep, so one from each side, and then whoever the council deems necessary. So
I'm just trying to think, because it's regional, should there be some non-Virginia input? That's what I'm, if we're really looking at that, what does that look like?
I don't think, not with the selection of architect.
Okay.
I think for the selection of architect, that's really Virginia's, who
Okay.
we'll be most comfortable working with when it gets to the point of maybe designing, and that might be a point when we ask others to
Okay.
participate, especially those that we're working on shared services with, but at this time, just to select the architect, I think it would be.
Okay, well, and I would volunteer if nobody else is interested. Having been through some of the process with the miners, I would volunteer to sit on that as an elected official looking out for the general public.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson. So who's on a Building and Grounds Committee?
I would,
Councilor Freely?
I am as well as Carl. I was going to nominate Carl if he's so interested to be a part of that selection, since you're the chairman of the Building and Grounds. Stephen, you?
Steve, you're on Building and Grounds? No?
No, it's Councilor Beyondich, Councilor Friedlieb, and Councilor Barnzelli.
So, I thank Councilor Johnson for volunteering, but from my perspective, I think it's a Building and Grounds issue. I really do. It's an architecture for a building. So I think because if the statement at our reorganizational meeting is that we need to do more to involve our committees, this is one example, we should be involving our committees. And so whether we have one or two representatives from our committee, I think we could only have one unless it's posted, right?
Posted as a meeting, it's not a,
So I would like to see members of the Building and Grounds Committee appointed. Or if you want to appoint one member of the Building and Grounds Committee and appoint Councilor Johnson, I'm fine with that, but I think we have to have some Building and Grounds representation at the table.
I would certainly volunteer to do that and nominate Carl to do so as well as Beyondich, unless we don't need that many. I mean,
Well, I would like to, I would like to see our committees, that's what the council has been requesting, several council members, that we include the committees more and more on some of these issues. And here's the prime example of where the committee can be effective moving forward in the long term and discussing what this is before it comes before the council.
and this is just to review the 4 proposals that have been made so far.
and to conduct the interviews, because step 2 of the process that was in the statement of qualifications was to conduct interviews with the firms.
Okay.
That would be part of the responsibility, is to attend a meeting that would require interviews. It'd probably be a very long
For the
meeting.
selection of
For
the
the
final
selection of the
architect. Okay, so, yeah, I'm,
Looking for a motion then.
yeah, I would make that motion to appoint the members of the Building and Grounds Committee to be a part of that selection committee for the Public Safety Center architect firm selection.
Okay, is there support?
I'll support, Mayor.
Moved by Councilor Freelieb, supported by Councilor Bearable. Is there any further discussion?
Yes, Mayor.
Councilor Barnzelli.
Councilor Bearable, aren't you on that committee?
No, it's you, Councilor Freelieb, and Councilor Beyondich.
Beyondich, okay.
It'll have to be publicly noticed. Anybody can go.
Absolutely. Because it's a committee meeting, it'll be publicly noticed, so anybody from the council or the public is welcome to sit in.
Yeah, it'll be a posted meeting.
And I would suggest if Steve has an interest, feel free to come and join the group.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly will be there just to listen and glean, the information about the process moving forward, so. So it's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is review the request for review the request for proposals for alcoholic beverage concession services at the MEC. And we do have Brian Silber, our Park and Recreation Director, here.
Once again, good morning, Brian.
Good morning, Council. As you are all well aware, the MEC is coming along, and we have approved the rental rates for the building. One of the consistent questions that we get with the weddings that are looking at booking at our facility is, what about alcohol? Previously, we had discussed what we were going to do with alcohol, and it was our intention to partner with a single alcohol vendor to provide the beer and liquor services for the MEC. In order to do that, we need to find out officially who is interested and have them put in some proposals. So we've gone through several renditions of a draft for an RFP, and I believe this is the 3rd rendition that you have before you today in your packet. And we are just asking the council's permission to put this RFP out so that we can start finding out who is interested in providing the alcohol beverage service at the MEC once we do open.
Brian, who put the proposal together?
This was put together by city staff. I put together the first draft. Britt has modified it. It has been reviewed by legal counsel and sent on to, I believe, a couple members at the state for them to review so that we are making sure that all of our I's are dotted and T's are crossed as we begin this process.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Paulson.
Would be the preferred method. Like at the Mountain Iron Community Center, I know I think any liquor vendor can go as long as they apply for the license prior to the event. And are you basically suggesting that this would be the best way to move forward, or should we also explore leaving it open for other vendors to be able to utilize if the client or the customer that is renting the facility so chooses?
In our design for the facility and for operation of the facility, it would be in our best interest to have one vendor have the sole pouring rights for the building, for the simple reason that in our concession stands, we do have the beer coolers and the keg coolers and those items. In addition to doing it this way, as part of the RFP, you may notice that there is a proposed revenue split that is in there. This would also enable the liquor and alcohol beverages to be a revenue generator for the MEC, whereas if we just allow anyone to utilize whoever that they want, we do not necessarily have that revenue stream for our budget for the different events.
Yeah.
Got it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Councilor Paulson. Councilor Bearable.
Yeah, Brian, I happen to agree with you 100%, because if not, you're messing around with all these liquor liability licenses, everything else, and this way you got one license for the whole, whatever time length you want to use it for the one vendor. They've got a lot of capital, because they're going to leave their stuff in the MEC, I imagine. They're going to haul it out each
Yes.
time, because it's too much work to do that. But you need the good liability, you need the good, and the split of cost.
Yes, and with the potential alcohol vendor having the ability to leave some of their product and everything in the MEC and be prepared for last-minute events, it should also benefit our customers, because they would not have to pay the alcohol vendor to haul over all their bar supplies for a one-night event and then haul everything back. So there would not be that cost for them. So hopefully this would mean that the alcohol service in the MEC would be a little bit cheaper.
And what I like about it is, there's in that agreement, you know, we want to present a professional decorum any place that we're in that building. And by making that vendor provide the proper attire, you know, make a presentable professional staff moving forward, I think is very important to whatever event that's being held there. So inclusive in that agreement, I think is important. One vendor, you'd get the consistency there. Councilor Freely, and then on to Councilor Johnson.
So essentially then, it's a revenue sharing agreement is what it is. They wouldn't be leasing space for their.
Correct.
Okay. And the length of the contract would be annual, I'm assuming?
I suggest that we look at maybe a 3-year agreement, but that's definitely up to.
This RFP alludes that when we select somebody, we'll enter into an agreement with them above and beyond with this. So it's not in the RFP. It'll be part of the contract process that we work out with the vendor.
Yeah, I mean, from an initial standpoint, I would think a 1 year to start, but if that's going to deter us from having somebody that's competent and capable and providing revenue, well, you'll have to determine.
And then we would also have to consider how often do we want to have to go through this process?
Correct. All right, thank you.
Remember, liquor licenses are only for 1 year, so that there's an automatic renewal process. They'll have to get a liquor license for this facility, so.
Thank you, Councilor Freely, Britt, Brian. Councilor Johnson.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a good start. I do have a question that's probably about 9 months too late. Do we have a locked liquor room?
We do have the ability to do that in the building, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Johnson.
Locked liquor storage area.
Councilor Bearable.
Yep, I've got another question, and might require a legal answer on this. If you're just getting a cut there, they're going to have trouble with licensure and stuff, because they're going to have to hold the license, not the city, correct?
Correct, they have to hold the license.
So they'll have to have an address, and if we can't give them the property for nothing, how do you put that into a lease so they have an address, which is required by the liquor The state of
Essentially,
Minnesota?
essentially, the profit sharing is the lease.
Okay, okay. So
They're
you-
going to, we
you've
also
checked with the,
required in the
you've checked with
RFP.
the state on that to make sure?
Pam has called the state and
Okay,
discussed.
then I'm
Yep,
okay
and
with it.
Brian Lindsay was part of the discussion, and
Then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, thank you, Counselor Bearable. Yes, Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't have a light to turn on. So, I guess just to tack on to what Councilor Bearable was saying, it does state that we're looking for qualified and experienced vendors with a current on-sale liquor license, and that would be from Virginia, from our municipality. Is that correct?
it should also say, or the ability to obtain one, if Pam has the most current copy in here.
Yeah, I believe
Okay,
that's what does
I
what it
guess-
says.
I don't see that, but maybe I missed it. But anyway, how many current on-sale liquor licenses do we have open or not open, but are being utilized right now? So I'm asking what the pool of local vendors would be, the number.
Pam, could you answer that?
Hear me?
Now
Yes.
can-
So in order to serve the alcohol, it can be a neighboring city that has the proper licensure, or someone in our city that has the proper licensing, which is the on-sale liquor license.
I think-
And variables on Sunday, if you are serving alcohol on Sunday, which obviously there could be games on Sunday, you will need to have a valid food license, just as you normally do for licensing in the city, and the adjacent cities are eligible as well with a Sunday license and a catering permit. So we've verified everything with the state, and so they are keeping us up to date on everything that we need to do.
Pam, what about the provision that any convention center can have a license any day of the week?
Yes, they still have to have the food license requirements. He just emailed me back as the meeting is going on here, so.
Well, with the revenue sharing, we have the
Correct.
food
The
license.
concession stand would be open at the same time as the,
I think Counselor Paulson's question, though, I think is, how many liquor licenses do we have currently operating in the city limits of Virginia?
17, I think.
Right now, we have 5 with the Sunday license.
Okay, does that answer your question, Counselor Paulson?
Yes, and then I guess the question was answered additionally that other adjacent cities could also apply. I just wanted to know what our reach would be when putting forth this RFP. So I appreciate those answers, and now it makes a little bit more sense to me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Counselor Barnzelli?
Thank you, Mayor. Who's responsible when they have a party at the new building? Do they have to furnish insurance, or does the city have that covered?
That would be covered under this RFP. The alcohol vendor will be providing the insurance. We've set this up to protect the city's interests and also be a revenue generator for the city and be attractive for a potential concessionaire to want to put in an RFP for this.
On the south side of the Miners Memorial Building, as it is today, my reception was there in 1977. You guys weren't born yet.
Oh, I was born.
Which reception are you referring to? The one when you were first on the council or a different one?
Different one.
Okay.
So we ate in the south, it was on the south side. We ate in where we have our meetings, and then the band was on the north end of the west side of the building. That's a good deal.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Counselor Paulson.
For this RFP that we would be proposing to put out, it's MEC specific and would not apply to any other city buildings like the Klein Cupoletti or any of the outbuildings at the Alcott Park or anything, any other buildings that are city-owned. This is MEC specific.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Counselor Paulson. So you're looking for a motion to go out for RFPs?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Freely?
Just one last question. What's the percentage split on the revenue sharing?
Be determined with the contract. This is just the RFP looking for those that are interested, and once we find the interested party that we want to enter into a contract with, we determine that
And it'll be throughout the contract or per event?
throughout the contract.
Okay.
Contract will dictate however they're going to split it. If it's going to be city-sponsored events, you get this much, not private events are this much, however, we work that out as part of the contract.
And that would be part of the RFP is for them to be proposing what that split would be.
Okay.
Plus, who's going
To make it competitive.
to make it
Yes.
competitive.
All right, thank you.
Correct.
Whether it's $1 a beer or $1, like at the Elks Club, $1 a plate for, the gate or whatever. So, okay. Counselor Bearable?
Just a quick question. I believe this RFP is eligible for anybody in the city of Virginia, any liquor establishment in the city of Virginia, because they can have more than one liquor license.
Anybody who can obtain one or has one currently.
Okay, so just make that clear that it's open to all the people that own
And adjoining,
facilities.
and also the adjoining cities.
Yep, that's right.
Also, keep in mind that as we are reviewing these RFPs, like Mayor Cuffey had said, their service is going to reflect on the MEC. When you attend a wedding there at the MEC, if there is terrible service as far as either the caterer or the alcohol service goes, people's comments that they make are not going to be, oh, such and such caterer did a bad job. It's going to be, I received this bad service at the MEC. So we want to be very careful in who we are selecting and ensure that they are going to be able to provide the quality of service that we expect because their service is going to reflect on us.
I'm assuming then, Brian, there's going to be a short paragraph at the end that we have the right within so many days to boot them out, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. And it's important for us to make sure they maintain a professional decorum. That goes from their ability to communicate with people, the whole deal, right? So, still looking for a motion or action from the council with the request that's being asked for today to move forward with the RFPs.
I'll make that motion to move forward with the RFP for the alcohol beverage concession services at the MEC.
Moved by Counselor Freely, been supported by Counselor Bornzelli, Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Second by Counselor Paulson. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those.
Counselor Paulson does.
Counselor Paulson.
Thank you. Just upon review then, are we going to be changing the language within that RFP before we put it forward to include the adjacent municipalities and anyone able to obtain a liquor license?
It is in the packet in the first
It's in
paragraph.
there.
It says qualified experienced
Is it in
vendors
there?
with a current on-sale liquor license issued by the municipality or with the ability to obtain an on-sale liquor license from the municipality.
Okay, so, and we don't have to include adjacent cities or adjacent communities then because that satisfies it?
And I have a really good suspicion that Brian's going to be going to the adjacent cities that have on-sale liquor license establishments and telling them that they should really look at this RFP and put in a proposal.
We've already had multiple individuals reach out to us asking when this is coming out.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. It's been moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Brian.
Next item on the agenda is recommendation to hire 2 patrol officers and approve a lateral transfer for each. We do have Deputy Chief Chad Nicola here.
You can come forward if you like, Chief. I don't have any problem with it. You've done lateral transfers before to experienced police officers. They're difficult for us to have, those. We're fortunate to have people with experience applying for this, so I'm comfortable with that. Counselor Johnson?
Mayor, I would move the lateral transfer for Ryan Maloney.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the lateral transfer for Officer Ryan Maloney,
All support, Mayor.
supported by Counselor Bearable. Is there any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second one.
I will move the lateral transfer of Daniel Nyland.
Counselor Johnson moves to approve the lateral transfer for patrol officer for Andrew Nyland. Is there support? Support by Counselor Freelieb.
Can I have a little
Further
bit of
discussion? Counselor Freelieb.
Do we provide lateral transfers in any other area throughout the city? That's what I would be interested in finding out, as opposed to just the police department.
We have in the past. One of the examples was, I think we had given, going to give to one of our heavy equipment operators.
Okay.
But he declined because he was making more money at his previous job, so.
I just ask because it's such a difficult thing in the education field to allow a teacher to be able to move laterally from one school district to another. But in any event, I think it's important to have this opportunity for people that are experienced and can come right in and provide value to our staff in the way that these guys, I'm assuming you expect them to. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I think it goes without saying too that, you know, the fact that contracts have gone the way they have is something that's drawing some of these folks with a lot of experience in. That's kudos to you guys. You know, I mean, seeing the value in paying well for our officers, it undoubtedly, these guys would not have applied otherwise. So it's a win-win.
Well, this is a common practice because there's such a competitive market out there for police officers now. So they're shopping around for the best opportunity, not only from a career perspective, but from an economic perspective as well. And we think we provide a professional and exciting and a challenging job as they move forward, along with a commensurate salary and benefit package. So thank you.
Exciting and challenging is one way
Yes,
to put it, Mayor.
Very
Yes.
much so. Moved and supported. Is there any further discussion? Counselor Bearable and Counselor Barnzelli.
Assistant Chief,
Counselor?
just a quick question for you. This shortens up the time. You don't have to do the big, long training or anything with the lateral transfers, do you? You don't have to have the 12 weeks?
We still do the 12 weeks, but we certainly modify it a little bit. They're usually out on their own a little bit quicker. In other words, they won't have that officer shadowing them completely the whole time typically, as long as off the bat we're seeing some good things. And with these two individuals, that's not going to be a problem at all.
Okay, so you put them into the routine maybe before the 12.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
That's the hopes, at least.
We use a more reasonable field training officer program as opposed to the Sokolov method.
Yeah, it's a little
Okay.
less of the crawl, walk, run, more of the walk, run type.
Very good.
method,
Thank you
so.
very much. Counselor Barnzelli.
Thank you. Chief, you have a full 2 guys left, you got 2 new ones coming?
That's the hopes. And then, you know, hopefully maybe down the road, possibly one more we would discuss maybe this spring. But yeah, I mean, this gets us sitting at least pretty good once again. That's the issue.
Very
Yep.
good.
So we are losing one to the county, unfortunately, which tends to be about every 1.5 or 2 year phenomenon, but so be it. Now, I keep calling them the UPS, the boys in brown, right, Mayor? But all good.
You are correct.
You are correct.
Thank you.
So, thank you, though.
All right, thank you. Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Counselor Freely.
Can I ask a question of
Yep.
Assistant Chief after the motion?
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Counselor Freely.
Yeah, thank you. Not to be a sensationalist of any sort whatsoever, but given the current tenor of this country, I'm just wondering if any conversations have been had at your level with regard to potentially welcoming peaceful protests potentially tomorrow in the event that that occurs, that we have some plan in place to make sure things are kept in control and we're welcoming them in a way in which...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. And it is always a concern. You know, and Chief Mattson, and that's just it, is making sure that our lieutenants are on the same page. And certainly if we do start seeing some things develop that crosses that line where it's not peaceful, making sure that the county is aware and whatnot. And, you know, we're pretty fortunate up here. You know, I mean, even with the stuff that was going on last summer, again, folks expressing concerns and thank goodness in this country we have the ability to express our concerns when things like that come up. But yeah, by all means, just making sure that we're aware, and also, on social media, there's always the chatter and whatnot about things, and I think we'll be just fine around here. Fortunately, the bigger cities are typically dealing with those problems, not so much us, but always something to be aware of, that's for sure. No, it is a very good point, though.
I think an example is you implemented your plan the last summer with the George Floyd protest. You made your preparations. You had your standby staff. You implemented a portion of the emergency operations procedure in standby mode. You took the liberty of communicating with those who were involved in the protest. You had an understanding in how things were working out. And so that was an example of what you would continue to do, unlike maybe some other departments don't do, moving forward.
Absolutely. And again, to those folks this last summer, they did a wonderful job of, making sure that everybody understood what their intentions were and whatnot. And I agree with you. The open line of communications with them helped out considerably.
Yeah, and it should continue to do so.
Absolutely.
And one more quick thing. We take seriously the communication we have our public, how we react to normal situations, tense situations, and emergency situations. And we have given you as a council and staff the tools necessary to affect the use of force continuum on use of force. An example being the tasers, having the body cameras that the county doesn't have, having the BOLO. So we implement those non-lethal forms if you have to go to that level of force. But you communicate, train, and the whole deal. And so I think we've set the tone and the example for that, judging from the ongoing requests you've had from news medias regarding the way we conduct our use of force training and how our officers react and respond. So thank you for that.
Well, and Mayor, and you brought up the body cameras. It's been well over 2 years now since we had the body cameras implemented, and you folks were willing to spend the money on them. Certainly Chief Mattson and I field complaints still, but typically as soon as the person understands that there is video footage of the incident, the complaint's done. We're more than happy to bring them in to view it. Most of the time, they don't even come in the doorway because they realize, it's going to show something not so good on their part. Our officers are doing the job the way that they should. So it is what it is. So again, thank you for you guys for being willing to spend the money on the equipment that we felt was necessary.
Thank you, Chief Nicola.
Yeah, just
Councilor Baraboo.
one other question, Chief. The requirement, and I'm not sure if it's in our ordinances, do we require permits for these demonstrations? We don't.
No, we do not.
We can, though, if we wanted to.
Yeah, well, like some of the discussions we've had, depends on where they plan on holding it. If it's on city property, that's one thing, but otherwise, if it's other areas.
Spontaneous ones, I know, but
Yeah, no, typically not, so.
should we be looking at something like that at all?
Personally, I would say no. At this point, I don't think so.
Okay.
The problem you run into now is then you're going to have a complaint that we would be requesting a permit and that somebody would say, well, now that makes it difficult for us to even exercise our rights. So it's a very slippery slope there. It really is. I think if it became a bigger issue down the road, certainly something we can visit, but from what we even saw this summer, I don't think it's something we have to
All
worry
right,
about.
I appreciate your advice.
Yeah, we don't want to suppress anybody's right to express peaceful freedom of speech, right? Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it very much.
Is that it? Come
Good
on,
luck.
this was way too easy on me today, guys.
Good
Come
luck.
on.
Good luck to the two new officers moving forward.
Absolutely. Thank you guys very much. We do appreciate it.
Chief, thank you. Britt?
Can I, if it's okay with the council, I'd like to move up to discuss real estate negotiations first before we talk about item number 11, which is a negotiation strategy.
Okay, do we have to go into closed session for this?
Not at this moment, actually.
I
We can
don't
talk
think
about
so.
it. We can talk about it right this, before we go into closed session, let me preface item number 12, discuss
very
real
good.
estate negotiations. We were approached by the private owner of the property that's known as the former Armory on the corner of 8th Street and 9th Avenue, requesting if the city is interested in purchasing the building. So today, we are here to ask you if the city is interested in purchasing the building, and if you'd like to go into a closed session to discuss a price.
And let me start because I've been working, I've been in discussions on for a long period of time about those kind of things, and in talking with Mr. Lency, who is the conduit for Mr. Higgins, who lives in Duluth, and the rumors in about what he's asking for the property. I just wanted to clear the air. And so when Greg called me last week, I said, let's set up a meeting with our city administrator, and John Sullivan was there as well, and to talk about, what their thoughts are. And so can we talk about their looking at other parts of the city? Can we talk about that, Britt? They are, right? Okay, they will sit.
Not.
Huh?
Probably not, no.
Okay, so he came up with a general information about they're willing to sell the property. They're willing to sell the property, and so so before we go into negotiations, we wanted to come to the council and say, is this something you want to do? And so for a little history of that, I mean, we should probably know that there's a tank under the ground, right?
Underground storage tank, there was a leak, I believe it was petroleum in 1995, that looks like it was cleaned up, but it's still under MPCA's watch list.
Yeah, so, anyway, so that's a kind of a broad perspective, I think. Councilor Freely?
Well, I guess, it's good to have John here too, because, there's no better place in town right now for, the potential for development when you just built a brand new, close to $40 million building that's going to be hosting events from across potentially the state and further. I guess you have to look at it from a perspective as the plus minus from the starting point of what we would be looking at paying for that. If it's within the reasonable plus minus of the estimated market value of that property, then I think it would be reasonable to at least consider that and look at the possibility of. I think it would be beneficial and advantageous for the city to have a handle on that property and how it could be developed, I think. But at the same time, keep in mind, we have a white elephant up there on Highway and Midway that we purchased with the anticipation of development, which doesn't mean that that still can't happen, but we're running into these obstacles to see that through, including even just getting the thing torn down without excessive costs to the city. So, and keep in mind too, we were offered a newly remodeled building in town too that potentially had revenue producing capabilities as well that we turned down. So, I mean, we just have to weigh in terms of whether it's going to be beneficial and advantageous to the city. From my perspective, just kind of initially looking at it, I think it's a very valuable piece of property in town to be able to have under the ownership of the city potentially. That's where I stand on that. Thank you.
So far, it looks like we might be gravitating into discussing it further in a closed session. But Councilor Johnson.
I was hoping to ask for a break prior to this discussion, so I'm confused as to if Mr. Higgins or Mr. Lency came to us completely all of a sudden to say, hey, we're interested, or was there communication from a city official or city administration saying, hey, we want to buy it?
I'll clarify that for you, Councilor Johnson. I think that question's directed at me.
No, I'm just curious.
No, it is because I said
Okay.
that, yeah. So, no, he came to me.
Okay.
And I forwarded to Britt for further discussion to bring before the council.
Okay. And I think we should have the discussion in closed session about where we want to move on this. Just because I think it's important. It is a valuable piece of property. However, it's also a very costly piece of property in the same breath. So I think that's something we should have a discussion on.
Okay, very good. Councilor Paulson, would you like to weigh in?
That it's an extremely valuable property, and I think we do need to go into closed session to have a further discussion about what would that look like. But I do foresee the underground storage tank as a potential liability, not dissimilar to any of the other roadblocks that we've incurred along the different developers that have come forward looking or requesting looking at properties. So I feel like, we might be forced into a public-private partnership at some point, whether it's being a fiscal agent for mitigation or abatement. But I guess I would look forward in having further discussion in a closed session, but I do agree that that's an extremely valuable property at this point.
Okay, thank you. We've had some discussion. Counselor Bearable.
I don't think we need to go into closed session yet at this point in time. We need to let administration, I have conversations with Mr. Higgins and Mr. Lindsay about this, unless, Britt, you feel so, because I'm not worried about the storage tank, because that's petrol. It'll be covered under the petrol fund.
Only 90%.
Yeah, well, 10%, but they aren't that expensive to haul those things out. I know private businesses have done that, so.
And there's demolition. There's other costs that go into
Yeah,
purchasing
I
the building.
understand. Do you
But I
want
do
to
have a
close?
price. He did give me a price, so unless you want to talk about it, I can't talk about it in public.
No, I know you can't, but I don't care at this point, unless everybody else does.
Yeah, I think the conversation at the administrative level would behoove us to discuss it further at closed session. I think it would answer some of your questions, Counselor Bearable. So after some discussion, so the next step is there anything else on the agenda before we move into closed session?
The last item on the agenda is the discuss city's labor negotiation strategy related to labor negotiations with AFSCME, which is also a closed session.
So when we go into closed session and talk about item number one, it appears as though we may likely go there to talk about the Higgins, the Armory. Would we want to have our Park and Rec Director and our community planner in the closed session during these discussions?
The real estate negotiations, yes, but when we get to labor
Right.
negotiations, there'll be nobody
Correct.
but that.
Correct. So we would want to do that. So, okay, thank you. So we're looking for a motion to go into closed session to discuss first the Armory and then secondly, the labor negotiations. Moved by,
Closed session.
okay, moved by Counselor Paulson, supported by Counselor Freelieb. Is there any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're now in closed session. Can we take just a quick break? Sherry? Take a quick break, thank you. 5 minutes.
Pam and Julianne, I'll give you guys a call in 5 minutes.
Thank you so much, Brett.
Thank you.
Cafe? Open from 7.